Hey there, you guys, you are in for a treat. You're here because you're choosing to learn more about AI and education. Bravo. Whether this means that you are all in already, you're kind of on the fence, or you are vehemently against it, please know that you are welcome here. I am so amped for you to get to hear this conversation with MacKenzie Price. She's the co-founder of 2 Hour Learning and Alpha School, and this model utilizes AI to help kids learn what they need in less time and spend more time doing worthwhile projects that they love. So I am really excited for you to hear this conversation with MacKenzie. But just in case you're new here, my name is Melissa. I'm a homeschooling mom of 4. I'm an online teacher and a mentor to people looking to do something similar to what I do online while also homeschooling, perhaps. So if that's you, I am so glad you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe below, like this video. It really helps me know what you guys are enjoying so that I can keep creating more content like this. All right, let's get to it. Enjoy. Hey, MacKenzie, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Let's go ahead and dive into all things 2 Hour Learning and Alpha and this education revolution that you have begun. But I do want to kind of back things up a little bit. Let's start with a memory from your own experience in school that has kind of informed what you're doing now.
Ooh, a memory from my own experience at school. I will say that on a bigger note, I was always really good at school. I was a very committed student, but I never liked school. I was not very happy with school. And I often was that kid who would raise my hand when the teacher was explaining something. I'd be like, I'm sorry, when am I ever going to use this? Why do I have to know this? And I remember they said, well, it's really important, in chemistry to understand why solids are solid. And I would knock on the desk and I would say, it's solid. I can put my book on it. That's all I need to know. And I'm probably never going to work in some sort of industry where I really need to know the reason for this. So I think in general, that was something that always drove me, was wanting to understand like practical application and how what I was learning connected with what I was interested in and wanting to dive deeper in. So that's one thing I will say is a memory that I've had in terms of thinking about school. And then let me think of a positive memory. Gosh, that's the thing that is such a bummer that I find about my school is like, so I have a lot of experiences where I would be frustrated, and seeing that. But how about this? I will tell you, I had one of the best teachers in the entire world, my business teacher, my junior year and senior year of high school, Mr. Chuck Blood, who was absolutely a phenomenal person. And the reason that I connected so well with him was because he took such a strong interest in getting to know me as a student and as a person, and also being able to see the spark that I had for things like marketing and sales and helping me kind of dive into that. And so I really think about that teacher and the fact that he was one of the people that made a lifelong mark on what I do. And I learned a lot from that class and mostly from him.
Wow. And I have to say thank you. I'll say thank you to Mr. Wood because I love watching what you have built. And so let's just jump right into that. I love this is how we connected, your social media. You're showing us ways that 2 Hour Learning and Alpha are helping kids make huge learning gains. And for those who may not be familiar with who you are, would you mind just kind of filling in those gaps for them real quick?
Absolutely. I started a school in Austin, Texas in 2014 when my daughters were in 3rd grade and 1st grade. My girls had been in the traditional public school system for a couple years. And one day my daughter came home and said, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. And I said, what do you mean? You love school. And she looked at me and she said, school is so boring. And I had one of those moments where I just realized, oh my goodness, they have taken a kid that's like tailor made to want to love school and love learning, and they've wiped that passion. And it reminded me of me and the experience that I had going through school. And I knew that my daughter would continue to be a diligent student, just like I had been, and that she would probably get through fine. But I looked at that and thought there is a lot of years between her as a 2nd grader and her graduating from high school, and something's got to change. And for me, it wasn't about public school versus private school. It was about the model of education and the fact that the standard classroom with a teacher teaching 20 plus kids in a group is just not working anymore. It doesn't allow personalization or the ability for children to go at whatever pace is appropriate for them. And I didn't see anything in my community that was really matching what I envisioned. And so I decided to start my own school. And I always say, and one of the things that I want to do with my social media and with any connections I ever make with people is I want to inspire parents to know that they have the ability to make change in their kids' life, that they can do something. And so fast forward all these years, I now have a group of schools that are all based on this fundamental premise that your child does not need to sit in class for 6 hours a day in order to not just get done academics, but to crush academics. And we can do it in only 2 hours. And so we use an AI tutor and adaptive apps to provide every single student with one-to-one mastery-based learning. And as a result, they are able to learn twice as fast in only 2 hours a day. And then, of course, one thing that I found, Melissa, is that parents do not want their kids to come home after 2 hours, right? School is a bundle. School is meant to provide a lot of other experiences for kids. And so we spend the rest of the day, instead of sitting in academic classes, we do life skills workshops where we're teaching life skills like leadership, teamwork, public speaking, financial literacy, empathy, socialization, all of those types of things that are really life skills that parents want their kids to learn and that we need in order to be really great citizens of the world and raise this generation. And so I have schools called Alpha that do this general life skills workshops in the afternoon. And then we've recently launched a sports academy where kids crush their academics in 2 hours in the morning, and in the afternoon, they get to go outside and do PE and athletics and general just being physical, right? And getting to move around. We also have a GT school, which is a gifted and talented school for those kids that want to be really, really academically rigorous. In fact, by the end of 8th grade, if they start with us in kindergarten or 1st grade, they'll have finished high school by the time they finish middle school. So really academically rigorous workshops in the afternoon. And then we also have another school that's a middle school program called Next Gen Academy. And we leverage kids' love of gaming and esports in order to teach life skills. And if you really think about it, Melissa, if it's really true that it only takes 2 hours a day to do academics and the rest of the day can be devoted to developing life skills, there are so many options of how kids would want to spend their day. It might be performing arts. It might be horseback riding. It might be entrepreneurship. You know, there's a lot of different ways for kids to do that. And so I am trying to get the message out that kids can crush their academics in 2 hours a day and then spend the rest of the day developing life skills.
I love that. And as a homeschooler, you're preaching to the choir here, MacKenzie, because as a homeschooling mom before, something that I love is kind of equipping my kids with the skills to find the answers on their own, to kind of guide them through those bumps. You know, this is a safe space. And we're going to talk a little bit about your guides, because when we think of those fantastic teachers that we had, that's who they were. They were people who took an interest in us. They were the people who like kind of let go of the academics for a second and were human, and were able to kind of get to the root of what was going on in the academics, if there was any issue, and kind of encourage us and motivate us to move on. So I love that. But
well, you know, homeschoolers have known for a long time that you don't need the entire school day to do academics. So that is something the homeschooling community has been very clear on. And a lot of times when I talk to homeschooling families, the reason they're homeschooling is because they want their kids to have like a very full, rich experience with other things that they're getting to do, you know, during the rest of the day. So the 2-hour learning model actually fits very, very well with that philosophy of homeschool. We're launching a homeschooling program for 2-hour learning later on this summer as well. Because, you know, I think parents really know, like, here's the skills I want to help my kids develop, and homeschoolers are amazing.
Yeah. I agree. And I feel like I've lived this. And as a public school kid myself, I went to UVA. I loved the idea of being great at school, but I wanted something else. So I think I have a similar story to you in that, like, I was great at it, but I didn't enjoy it. And I wish
Yeah.
something different for my kids. So I want to just scooch back just a little bit, because with that extra time, I love hearing what some of your students are doing with that extra time. Can you just share some of those amazing stories that are kind of coming out of this program?
Yeah. Well, let's start at our youngest level. How about that? We have, our program starts with kindergarten, and our theme that we have every year is for parents, we want kids to be able to say, Mom, Dad, let me wow you by
Mm,
showing you that I can do something that maybe seems impossible, that you think there's no way we could do. Fundamentally, the premise that I have is that kids are limitless and that it's our job to provide an environment that allows them to unlock their potential. So that starts with the very first afternoon workshop that we do when a kindergarten student comes in, is that they're going to learn how to swim in the deep end of the pool. And if they already know how to swim, they're going to be coaching their peers to be able to do that. We incorporate growth mindset strategies as part of this, and we're always helping kids from very early on get set with goals that they have. Like, here's a goal that I want to work on, and here are the things that I need to do in order to accomplish that goal. So it starts there. Another thing that we believe about life skills is that, life skills have traditionally been kind of a soft skill that's like hard to measure. And we think it's really important that we have like the ability to show, hey, does this kid actually have this life skill, right? If we have worked on this life skill, how do we know that they've done it? So, an example I love to use is grit. The idea of sticking with something, even when it's hard, even when you feel challenged or you have failed, do you have the ability to stick to something and have grit? And so we don't just hand our students the Angela Duckworth book, Grit, and say, read this book and write a book report on it. What we do for our second and third graders is we have a grit triathlon. And the triathlon consists of three things. The first is they've got to be able to solve a Rubik's Cube. The second is they have to be able to juggle three items for at least 30 seconds. And then they have to go run half a mile. And it's really fun because on the first day of the workshop, when we introduce this grit triathlon, you'll hear kids be like, oh my gosh, I can never do this or that or that. And we get to introduce to them the power of yet. Maybe I can't do it yet, but it turns out that with a Rubik's Cube, there's an algorithm that you can learn how to do, and you can memorize this. And it turns out that in order to learn to juggle, you start out by, juggling scarves, and then eventually you're juggling balls. And if you're going to run, you start out by running a little bit every day, and you got to work consistently. And by the end of our 6-week workshop, when it's time for the kids to participate in the grit triathlon, we have our parents come to what we call the test pass experience for the workshop. And they get to watch their kids, and we start the whistle, and they do their Rubik's Cube, and then they juggle their items, and then they run the half mile, and they come back. And those children who are able to complete that grit triathlon have shown that they have developed that life skill of being able to stick to something, and they're also learning how to learn. They have to go figure out, okay, how do I solve a Rubik's Cube? What is it that I do? So that's an exciting thing to do. We just had a video on Future of Education that went really viral that was talking about what our 5th and 6th grade students are doing. They had a workshop this year where they learned how to manage an Airbnb. And that started with general financial literacy education, understanding, about how homes are purchased or leased, making decisions on whether buying a house or an apartment or renting something is a better option. Now, the school was providing the funding for these children to be able to do this. They ultimately decided that they were going to rent a property that they could then sublease out as an Airbnb. So they had to go through a lot in order to learn about that. They had to figure out where in town was going to be the right thing, what's the audience that they were going after, what was the pricing that they were going to be doing. They had to figure out how to decorate the property. One of the things that came up with that was they were trying to decide what kind of couch they should put in the living room. And as part of that, they were like, well, is this the kind of place where we're going to have families stay? And so we should have like a nice, comfortable sectional where they can watch movies. Or is this going to be a place where they're going to pile as many people into it as possible? And so we should have a pull-out couch that turns into a bed. What are we going to be doing with that? They had to then price and source, the furnishings to figure out what their cost was. And then they worked with their guide to put their listing up on Airbnb and then start negotiating, the process. Now, that workshop was a full year-long workshop because there's a lot involved with figuring all of that out. And the student that was in our video was so excited on the day I talked to him because he said, we're fully booked for the summer. So he's also thinking about vacancy rates and all of those types of things. And I will tell you, Melissa, it's been interesting. We've gotten a lot of controversy on that video because there's so many people who are very like Airbnbs are horrible, evil parts of society, and you're raising slum landlords and whatever. And you know what? Here's the thing. How about we expose children to understanding things around financial literacy, like home ownership, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, what's involved in that, and provide them with those skills, to be able to make decisions later on. And that's kind of an experience that they get. Our middle school students were completing a Tough Mudder as an example of one of the things they're doing. So we're using physical fitness as something they're developing, plus a lot of teamwork. They had a great time on that. We also did basically a Can You Survive in the Wild workshop where our students were learning all about how to literally survive in the wild. And then they went and spent 3 days in the Colorado wilderness doing exactly that, so that was an example that we had. Another workshop that was really fun, and we are very AI forward at our schools. We literally use AI to do all of our teaching. But the other thing that we do is we want our students to learn how to use AI as tools that give them superpowers. And so one of the workshops we do was basically a socialization workshop around teamwork, empathy, and communication. And the test to pass for that workshop was that our students went to an escape room and they were all mic'd up. And we used AI to analyze their intonation and the words that they said. Were they uplifting? Were they positive? Were they great team players? And so these students had learned a lot of skills throughout this session around how to be an effective team member when you're in a high stakes pressure environment, which escape rooms are, and they're really fun too. And then they had prompted the AI GPT to be able to help give them feedback on how they did in that. And so they're using AI to learn this, and they're getting to have a great time while developing teamwork. We also did a workshop that I thought was really fun that was all around how to be a spy. But what the life skills were we were really developing socialization. How do you make eye contact? How do you engage in conversation? How do you keep a conversation going? How do you read body language? Like, think about, Melissa, when you're at a party and you're talking to someone and pretty soon you start to notice their feet are going this way and you're like, oh, this person does not want to talk to me anymore. Let me realize that and I'll either give them a graceful exit or figure out if I can change the conversation, to make it work. And it was really fun because we had one of our students came up to me in the hall during this workshop, and he's on the autism spectrum. And he came up and he said, hi, Miss MacKenzie. And he reached out and he shook my hand and he started making conversation about the weather and how's your week going? And he's just chatting it up with me. And as we were in the conversation, he at one point looks at me and he says, have you noticed I've been maintaining eye contact? And I said, I have totally noticed that. That's incredible. And like I said, this happened to be a student who is on the spectrum, but guess what? Those are life skills that every young person needs to develop and learn. In fact, there's a lot of adults I know who could maybe take a refresher course in some of those socialization skills. So we work at those things. And then at the high school level, our students have the afternoons free to develop what we call a very ambitious kind of alpha masterpiece project. So the idea behind this project is that it's as impressive as being an Olympian, right? What is it that you can do? And so we have one student who raised $350,000 in venture funding to build Texas's largest mountain bike park. And he was able to do everything from, of course, creating the business plan, finding the funding, finding property, negotiating a lease, planning the mountain bike park, hiring and managing a team of 20 to build the park out, marketing for that, plus doing press on it. He ended up filming a documentary about that. And he developed so many life skills as a result of this experience. He got asked to go down to SpaceX and build a mountain bike park on the SpaceX campus as part of this. And he's working on other things. We have another student named Grace who got really interested in the link between cancer and what ultimately came to be epigenetics. Like, is cancer just hereditary? And does it just depend on if you get the bad gene, or is there something you do? And she ended up doing a lot of research and connecting with experts in the field. And she created a documentary called Cancer, a Foodborne Illness. It's been viewed 4.6 million times on X. And she's on a tour throughout the country right now, showing her documentary and basically explaining what she's gotten to experience. So, here's the big thing with this. When we give kids back their most valuable resource, which is time, and then provide them with support and guidance to go learn these life skills, kids can do the most incredible things.
They can. And I love it. And it makes me cringe to know that so many of them are sitting for 6 hours a day trying to, give back what they think they should be giving to the teacher or whatever. So in this case, I love hearing all these beautiful stories, and you're using AI to do teaching part of it. So
we have no teachers, Melissa. We literally don't have teachers in our school.
So before everybody leaves and is like, this lady is crazy, tell us why. Tell us why this is such a good idea.
So first of all, I want to say this. Teachers are underpaid, they're overworked, and they're underappreciated. That is just a hard stop line. And so we have such a big crisis happening in our country and in our world with not having enough high quality people who are willing to dedicate their lives to being with students. And I understand why, because it's such a thankless job. But here's what I also believe. I believe that teachers have been put in an impossible position where they aren't really able to be successful because of the model that they're working within. So again, the idea of one teacher having to teach a group of 20 plus students. I mean, I'll even say having to teach 10 plus students. It's not that many students before it becomes really hard to tailor an educational experience for each and every one of them. But you have a teacher who's teaching multiple students who arrive in her class or his class with completely varied levels of knowledge. So you have a 6th grade class who comes in for math. Some of those 6th graders might have math understanding at an 8th grade level. Some of those 6th graders have math understanding at a 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade level. Very few are actually at grade level. And even if they are at grade level, there's a lot of wiggle room for what grade level means. And yet that teacher is expected to take these students and in a certain amount of time, not only catch them up, which is frankly impossible to really do, but get them through a year's worth of material and then move them on to the next level. It just doesn't work. And learning science is known for many, many years that the best way to educate a child is with one-to-one mastery-based learning. And it would be incredible if every single student could have a tutor sitting next to them who was an expert and knew everything. And here's what the thing is now, it's possible with an AI tutor. And with technology, we now have the ability to provide that one-to-one learning experience for each and every kid. And I would actually argue it's even better than a human because this tutor is completely an expert at the material that they're doing, and they're able to constantly notice and monitor, does the student understand this concept? Do they need to go slower? Do they need to go faster? Is the reason they're struggling with this concept because they just need to review the concept again, or they need to go back and fill holes from a month, 2 months, 2 years, 3 years ago? What is it that they can do? And so what we've done is we've used AI and technology to do what it's best at. And then we have transformed the role of the adult in the classroom. And so here's the thing. I think most educators, and you can tell me if I'm right, Melissa, I think most educators got into this business to positively impact children. I know that's why, my teacher, Mr. Blood from, Cherry Creek High School, he got into the business to connect and make a difference with young people. And they didn't necessarily do it to create lesson plans and grade homework and read papers and give grades to that. They didn't necessarily do that. And so what we're doing is we are taking the adults that are in that building and we are transforming their role into that of a guide and a motivator. And those adults, we call them guides because they are not teaching. They're not teaching academics. They are guiding and they're coming alongside students. Their primary job is motivational and emotional support to help connect with the kid to understand why. So when we think about the very first question you asked me, I was a great student, but I was always the one saying, why do I have to know this? And how amazing if my teacher could sit down with me and take time to say, hey, MacKenzie, let's help you get excited about chemistry and let's help you connect it. Even though we know you're not planning to go be a chemist or whatever, let me connect chemistry with something that you are interested in and help you understand that. Or even more importantly, and this is actually something I would argue, you know what? Chemistry, sure, it's great to know, but you're right. You're not going to go be a chemist. Let's go find what you're really excited about and let's go deep on that. Right. And so these guides are critical to our model, but they're the ones who are working with these students to help them develop life skills. And they're the ones who are helping them figure out how do they handle things when they're challenged? What are the growth mindset techniques that they can use in order to accomplish what they want? And then where's that intersection of their talents and their passions?
Yeah. And that just makes so much sense to me, especially now having this experience homeschooling. I'm like, yeah, every kid needs this. And the fact that it's there, the fact that it's available is what I'm so jazzed about. So I don't want people to get lost in the weeds on this. There are so many parts of this that when they fit together, it's a beautiful thing. And I love your podcast for this reason. Future of Education, it's an amazing resource. And I just, even being in education, I love listening to these episodes because you cover so many really timely topics. It's given me a lot of hope to know that there are other educators out there who are actually adopting this and they're actually helping kids learn using AI and use it correctly in a lot of really creative ways. So
well,
about a few of the most surprising things.
One thing about teachers that I've noticed is that, teachers are in such a tough spot right now because they're scared at this point. They're like, oh my gosh, what's happening with AI? I don't know about AI. AI is this tool that's used for cheating. And what are we going to do? And what I have found, and I spoke at South by Southwest EDU, I spoke in March to a room full of teachers. And at the beginning of the conversation, I asked them, how many of you are scared that AI is going to replace you? And they raised their hands like, yes, I'm scared. And at the end of the conversation, I had a standing ovation of teachers saying, oh my gosh, you are painting a vision of a more satisfying role that allows me to do the work that I really got into this field to do, to work with the kids, and takes away a lot of the pain points and struggles that I've had. And on top of that, provides better academic results for these students. It really is something that's possible. The other thing is it's scalable, right? We can do this. We can provide then these teachers who become guides or any adult who wants to get into education that maybe wouldn't want to become a teacher, but would be a phenomenal motivator and get excited about that and say, let's go put you where humans are best, right? Humans are doing that. And that's one of the reasons that I believe artificial intelligence can be used to raise human intelligence. Let's let people do what they're best at, and let's let technology do what it's good at.
Absolutely. Agreed. And I want you to highlight some of the things that you've kind of talked about on that podcast that have even surprised you, maybe things that have come out of that you've been pleasantly surprised at or that people have reacted to. What are some of the best topics that have come out of that podcast so far?
Well, it's interesting. My podcast, I feel like I kind of go all over the place. And I don't know if my podcast has quite found its solid home. I know that we get a lot of interest on the podcast where I interview a guide at our school or a student or, tell kind of the story of what we're doing. So that's one aspect of it. And I think it's an important one. But the other thing I do with the podcast is I try to bring other people in who are doing something that is more innovative and just thinking about what that future looks like. So I will tell you there's one conversation I remember having around dyslexia and some of the technology that is now available to help rewire the neural pathways for dyslexia and dysgraphia, instead of just saying, hey, let's provide you as a student with some tools and some coping mechanisms to try to deal with this. Let's actually change these neural pathways. I thought that was something that was very exciting that people are doing. I also think it's really exciting when I get to talk to a public school person who's taking something and doing something big. I spoke to I think he was the superintendent of a large school district in the Atlanta area. And he was doing incredible things with really creating future ready people, right? And so they were doing a lot more life skills development and kind of trade development than I think a lot of schools do, which I thought was really exciting. And I will say one thing is, a lot of times for me, I feel like I'm trying to pound the wall of, hey, there's an alternative way to do school and it's not the traditional way. And a lot of times people say, well, then you're against public school. And you run private schools, so you're against public school. And guess what? 9% probably of people are public school people. I was a public school student all the way until I went to college. So I totally understand that that's the majority of it. And it's a hard place to be in. And I talk to so many teachers and administrative people, who care and on a thing. I think then when they all get together as a big beast, that's when it gets really hard to make change. So I get excited about talking to people who are in there trying to say, hey, I think we can make little bits of change here or there. I don't have this person on my podcast yet, but I'm reaching out to try to get her. Have you heard about the strictest headmistress in Britain?
No. Oh my
I
gosh,
need
no.
to Yeah, I'll have to find her name, but I just watched an interview that she did, and they have a documentary. She runs a school called the Michaela School, that's an inner city school I believe, in London, and she's doing some interesting things now. A lot of things that are very different. They are very militant and very, like strict. And one of the things that used to depress me when I would go visit my daughters at their traditional public school was I hated the strictness and the fact that when I would go into the lunchroom, they were so quiet and they had their assigned seats and they had to raise their hand if they wanted to stand up and get ketchup 4 feet away. And it just drove me nuts. So there were
Yeah.
some differences. But in general, I think we're at a tipping point in our culture. And I think COVID led to some of this, which is one, the fact that schools came into people's homes via Zoom and parents got to kind of see under the hood and realize like, whoa, this is what my kid is doing all day, and they didn't love that. And then people started saying, hey, maybe I'm open to like homeschool or doing a micro school or a pod or some experience like that. And then on top of it, the abysmal results that have come as a result of COVID learning loss and the fact that we're not getting better, we're getting worse. I think we're at a tipping point where parents are going to realize that, hey, there is another option out there. And I think that's the biggest thing, Melissa, that I always find interesting is every single person that you meet, we all had a personal experience with school, right? We all went to school. If we, the vast majority of certainly the people I interact with, all got to go to school. So we all have an idea of what school is. School is this thing that you just have to go through. It's kind of a rite of passage. And I love when I'm able to introduce the idea to a parent that, hey, you know what? School can be so much more than what we remember it to be or what our kids are experiencing. And so at our schools, we believe fundamentally in these three commitments. One is that kids should love school, and they shouldn't first of all, they should love school. And I always encourage any parent listening to this, ask your kid, do you love school? And I think most of the time you'll get a or maybe no, right? Every once in a while you get someone who says, yeah, I love it. And then if you ask them why, usually they'll say one of three things. What do you think they are?
Friends, PE, lunch, snack.
Yeah, exactly. Recess and that. And those are all great things about school. But we want kids to love school because they love coming and being challenged and getting to learn and getting to do new things and interact with people in meaningful ways. And so that's one of the commitments we have is that kids will love school. In fact, we survey our students every 6 weeks and we ask them two questions. We say, one, do you love school? Yes or no? We get above 90% yes on those. And then we ask them the next question, would you rather go to school or go on vacation? And you know what? We get like 60 some percent of our students say they'd rather go to school than
Saying
go on
something.
vacation. Yeah. And so that says something. Our second commitment is that our students will learn twice as fast in only 2 hours a day. And that's something that I think, first of all, in traditional education, parents just don't have a very good view into if their kids are actually learning anything. They get report cards that are just grades, on a piece of paper that a teacher has made an assessment of. They don't get a lot of information about that. And so we're very transparent. Like, here's what your kid is learning. Here's how fast they're learning. Here's what they don't know. And we want to learn that. And then third, they're going to develop life skills. And I think it's always really fun when I have a conversation with a parent who suddenly goes, oh my gosh, yes, this sounds amazing. The fact that I could have my kid come home every day and instead of just saying, I did nothing, be like, and then I worked on this and I was doing this and I was building a business, and I was working on something, whatever it is. I think those are the things that get people excited.
It's so exciting. And I think your podcast highlights this beautifully. And I think the hope that comes out of it in those conversations are beautiful. I love watching these stories that kind of come out that you're sharing about, which is very cool. And so I'm just all for this. So if you guys want to, I've already got that South by Southwest video on linked down below. So please go watch that if you're like, this sounds interesting. You'll get the full picture there. And you've also got one of your guides with you that joins you during that talk, which was fantastic. So if you want to dig a little deeper, that talk was really, really fantastic. MacKenzie, thank you so much for being here. We've covered so much. Is there anything we've missed that you think we need to touch on?
I will tell you, for being a person who used to walk around school when I was a student, wondering why anyone would choose to be working at a school, the rest of their life, I could talk about school all day long. So there's always more to talk about, but I think it's been such a really fun conversation. And I'm so grateful that you are willing to help me get that message out, to know that there is more available for options for kids.
Yeah. And something that I encourage homeschool families to do is, you have the space, especially if you've chosen homeschooling, you have the space. How are you going to change it? And if 2-hour learning is, in the homeschool program that you're building, is one of those options, consider it, my friend. Look into it, dig deep, and figure out why, because there's a reason why you're kind of looking for different things. So thank you for that. All right, as we wrap up, I always love hearing what people are looking forward to in the next 6 months or so, personally, professionally. What are you looking forward to?
I'm going to start personally with the fact that this was a really big milestone this past month. My oldest daughter, who is the one that really inspired me to start down this journey of building these schools, she's the one who had said that school was boring when she was in 2nd grade. She graduated from Alpha High School in May, and she is headed off to college this fall. And I am so excited to watch her launch into the next phase of her life. I've really enjoyed the process of being a mom for many reasons, but one of the reasons is it's really cool to have this person that I have helped grow and develop and guide over the many years, and watch who she has become and turned into. And now she's getting ready to fly out of the nest, and it's just so exciting. So personally, I'm just so excited. And I will say, I did really enjoy college. College was a lot of fun and great. But when I went with her to her orientation weekend, I was like, okay, I'm glad I don't have to go back to college and do all this stuff again, which I think is going to be helpful when I send her off in August. I'm not going to be like, oh, I wish I were going with her. I'll be like, have fun. I can't wait to hear about it, and do that. So that's one thing personally I'm really excited about. And then professionally, we are expanding. We're growing more schools. We want to make this program as accessible to as many students as possible. And so we're doing that in a few ways. We're working on public options, which would, of course, then allow us to offer 2-hour learning for free. The government would be funding that, but we want to offer this for free. So we're working on charter schools and virtual charter programs. I'm excited about the homeschool program. I'm excited about the homeschool program because we have had so much interest there. And then we're launching schools around the country, which is really exciting. So I truly feel like I'm living my life's purpose in terms of being able to help young people and really change education. It all comes back to that belief that I think kids really are limitless, and that we constantly underrate children, and that we can help provide this experience and environment that elevates them no matter where they're at, and helps them just develop competence, which we believe leads to confidence, and helping them find what drives them. And that's really exciting to me.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay. Well, if you guys want to continue following along with this journey as things progress, because things are progressing and it's really exciting, all of that info is linked below, and go follow MacKenzie and her team over on Future of Education. Again, all that is linked below too. MacKenzie, thank you so much for being here. And to you guys who are watching, if nobody's told you today, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. It's really important. Happy teaching, guys.
Thank you.